We're going to try something here with this deck of cards. I would just want you to pick a card, any card that you want out of the deck. It doesn't really matter what it is. Just kind of look through, and you can just put your finger out there, and you can select one. Just put your finger on one whenever you see one that you like. Let's say you pick the Five of Diamonds right there. That would be a very good card. I want you to get that image in your mind. Really think about that. Get the image in your mind so you can concentrate on it. While you're thinking about it, I just want to show you that all of the cards are uniquely different. There is no other Five of Diamonds in this deck. Okay, so there's one Five of Diamonds right there in the middle. Now, no strange moves, nothing going on, no shuffling, no cutting. I just want you to concentrate on that card, the Five of Diamonds. And you can see we give a snap, and it comes to the top. There's your card, the card that you were thinking of, the Five of Diamonds. Now, I know what you're thinking, that there must be some way in which there is another card just like it somewhere in the deck. But you can see, again, they're all uniquely different. Your card, the Five of Diamonds, at the very top is the only one that's in the deck. We could sign this card if we wanted to. Let me just show this to you again. We're going to take your card. I'm going to place it right into the middle very slowly, very fairly, just like that. No strange moves, no cuts, no shuffles. We just snap, and it comes right back up to the top again. Five of Diamonds. Let's try this again. This time I'm going to put it into the middle, facing up, so you can very clearly see that it is in fact in the middle. In fact, the top card is the Two of Clubs, right? The bottom card is the Seven of Diamonds, right there, right? And then your card, right here in the middle, truly is in the middle, is the Five of Diamonds. There's no disputing that it's gone into the middle of the deck. Okay, there are no other cards like that one. The bottom is the Seven of Diamonds, the top is the Two of Clubs. No strange moves. The halves do not shift places. Very slowly we snap, and you can see that your card once again indeed comes back to the top. Now, I know what you're thinking, that there's something really odd going on here, but it really is a completely normal deck. As slowly as you want, you can examine every single one of these cards. Absolutely every single one. There are no duplicates in this deck. There's only one Five of Diamonds, and of course you were able to freely select that card. So there's really no excuse here. There's no explanation for why this card should be able to move wherever we want it to. There it is again at the very top. And I'm going to do this one more time as fairly as I possibly can. We're going to take your card, the Five of Diamonds, right into the middle. And you can see here, right up to the last second, there it is going in. Okay, right into the deck. Very slowly. In fact, I could set this down right in your hand, and you can see we snap, and you can turn it over. You would see that there it is, the Five of Diamonds, right back to the top again. Okay, so ambitious card routine for the common magician. So the method that I just showed you, the little routine that I just did, had absolutely zero double lifts in it. There were no double lifts at all. And if you kind of know how these things work, if you were observant, you probably knew exactly what I was doing. But if you didn't catch on to what my game was, I'm telling you, there were no double lifts at all in that routine. There were no shifts. There were no passes going on in there. I do not have one of those passes that goes pop and everything switches places and it looks like nothing moved. I don't do that. I couldn't do that if my life depended on it, so I certainly don't do that. It didn't depend on any kind of wacky, cuts and controls. You'll notice that entire routine, I didn't cut the deck once that I remembered. I didn't shuffle it in any way. So, what's going on here? Well, it's very simple. But before I answer the question, I just want to mention there was a fairly well-known commentary by a magician, Di Vernon, who's often, of course, cited as kind of the grandfather or godfather of card magic, and that's certainly true. But I think it was him who said something to the effect of, you can do just about anything with just three particular moves. One of them being a double lift. If you have a decent double lift, if you have a passable double lift, you're good. Some kind of control like a shift or a pass, some way to hop the deck. And also a palm. If you're able to palm a card in some way, you can do just about anything. And I think that's probably true. However, that might be a little dated. I don't know. I think you can actually do a whole lot with just one particular sleight. I think that if you have a good Hofzinser spread call, and by the way, it's very easy to have a good Hofzinser spread call. Some people think that the spread call is a very difficult thing to acquire, and it depends on way too much dexterity to do it. And I want to try to show you that that's not necessarily true. But if you have a good spread call, that may be the only thing you need to do a pretty comprehensive routine, like an ambitious card routine. So the one that I showed you only had one sleight in it, and I used it over and over again in a couple of different ways, but I just did the same sleight. And it might have been nuanced a little bit each time I did it, so it wasn't done exactly the same way each time, but it was still the same sleight. And that was a Hofzinser spread call. So first I want to show you what a spread call is. This isn't going to be a terribly comprehensive lesson on the spread call, but I want to show you maybe a method by which you can acquire the ability pretty quickly, and you'll understand the concept very quickly. A spread call is very simply the ability to take a card from anywhere in a spread, in a deck spread, and get it to the bottom of the deck. So if you have the cards facing down, it's going to go to the bottom of the deck. If you have the cards facing the other way, it's going to go to the top. And a spread call looks essentially just like this, where you just getting the card and pulling it out to your right so that you can get it underneath everything else. Okay, so that's it. And the really neat thing about a spread call is that it can be done painfully slowly. In fact, there's a sense in which if you do it, the slower that you do it, the more amazing it looks. You can go really, really slowly. And nobody is the wiser. You do not have to do this fast. It's not something that has to be done briskly. You can have total control over it while you're talking, and it can be very. You can absolutely fry people's brains with this. Okay, maybe even some magicians. So let me show you how to acquire a decent spread call fairly quickly. There's a lot of good instructional videos out there on the spread call. There's a lot of free ones on YouTube, and the free ones are good, so you don't necessarily need to buy any instructional videos on it. Probably the ones that are most famous are Ian Moran's The Call Father DVD set, and also Kostya Kimlet has a couple of DVDs on. There's a bit of a misunderstanding about his instructional videos. That the DVDs are called Roadrunner Call. The Roadrunner Call, just to clear this up, is not a special kind of call. It is really just a Hofzinser spread call on steroids. So Kostya Kimlet is showing you how you can use that principle of a Hofzinser spread call and call many, 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 many cards up to half the deck is essentially what he's teaching you on there. But he's just showing you the Hofzinser spread call, and his instructional DVD is really just about that call. That's what he's teaching, is the Hofzinser spread call. So if you want to learn it, that's a good place to go. I'm going to show you kind of my way of approaching it, which maybe you'll find enlightening. I don't know. Maybe you'll think this is a waste of time. I'm not sure. But here's how I look at it. A spread call is nothing more than switching two cards, one for the other. And there's a lot of places in Magic where we do that. one of them might be a top change. So I have an ace of clubs here on the top and a jack of spades here. And in a top change, you would maintain some kind of break on the card that you're switching out. And then in an offbeat, you would deposit the card on top and then take the card underneath, and then you've switched them out, right? And you can do this briskly or slowly. If no one's paying attention, it really doesn't matter what speed you're doing it in. But the fact that you can come near the deck with a card and then switch it out for another card is very, very useful. So a top change is one place that we're doing that. Another one is an Elmsley count. So you have these 4 cards here, a jack, an ace of clubs, 4 of hearts, and an ace of diamonds. And I want to count through all 4 cards. And I would take 1, then I would shove off 2, and I would peel back the 1 underneath, and then put the jack on, and then the ace of diamonds again. And what I never showed was the ace of clubs. Now I'm not going to go over that, but just suffice it to say, what you're doing is the action of depositing a card and taking one back underneath. You're taking one back out in that count. So that's another place where you do the same kind of action. It's really the same thing as a spread call. It's no different than that. The way you can learn the spread call is just by doing it with 2 cards to start with. We'll do this face up. Oh, that's good. Ace of clubs, ace of diamonds. Very easy to see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this card on the left hand kind of on top of my pinky, because I have the spread there kind of guiding using my pinky. I'm going to take the ace of diamonds. I'm just going to push it over top completely, over top of the ace of clubs, so that I can make contact with my thumb on the card that's covering the ace of diamonds, and then I can make contact underneath with my fingers over here, and I'm going to push off with my thumb and pull back with my fingers and pull out the ace of clubs. Very, very simple maneuver. So once again, I'm pushing on the ace of clubs, I'm taking it with my thumb in the left hand, and then I'm taking out the ace of diamonds with my fingers. So like this. This is the move. This is really just the spread call. This is the spread call move. I'm just taking the bottom card out with these fingers underneath and peeling it away. Now you can see it more in action if I add another card to this. So I'm still going to be trading off the club for the diamond. So I bring in the top card, cover the bottom one, and I take it out. And what I do is I peel it out and I walk it back with my fingers so that it clears the cards coming after that, this 4 of hearts. And what I could do is I could continue to spread and push my spread in over top of my ace of diamonds now, thereby bringing my ace of diamonds to the top. If I add even more cards, it's even easier to see. So we'll add maybe 3 or 4 more cards to that. I'll add 1 more card over here. So still, I'm kind of switching my ace of clubs for the ace of diamonds, same move, and I'm going to get this ace of diamonds out so that it's on the very top of the pack. So again, I cover it up with the card right in front of it, the ace of clubs, and once I get it there, I walk it out with my fingers, and then I've cleared it so that I can push all other cards in on top of that ace of diamonds, just like that. And I've got my ace on top. So again, it's just that same move. It's just that same move of taking one card out and replacing it with a 1 on top of it. It's just this move. That's all it is. Okay? That's the spread call. That's really all there is to it. Over time, you can learn to do this out of a very large packet. And it doesn't really take as much time as you might think. So let's say I'm going to call the jack of clubs here. I'm going to push my 9 of diamonds over top of it until it covers it, and then I'm going to walk it out underneath my fingers. I'm just going to pull it out like I'm switching it out from everything else with that card above it, and then I have it cleared from all the cards coming after it so that I can spread the rest of them in on top, just kind of wedging the rest of the deck between my selected card and the rest of the pack. Okay, just like that. Another way to look at this, you can see some people kind of setting up red-black separations by doing this kind of a move. If I take my hearts here that I have before my next black, or my red cards rather, before my black cards, if I take them off and I wedge them in underneath my black cards, you see that I put them in with the next red ones, and then I peel off to the next break where I have red cards and black cards and I wedge them in So you see what I'm doing? I'm just putting all the black cards on top. In a way, this is kind of the reverse mechanics of what we're doing in a spread call. We're wedging in cards on top. It's as if you're looking at the call from the underside. This is the same kind of move, right? In fact, you can even call cards that way, if you think about that in reverse, without having to slide them out from underneath. Okay, so again, we cover up. This is the real call. I'm going to call out the 2 of clubs. I cover it up with the king of clubs, and then I just peel it out very, very slowly, and I thumb through and push with my left hand all the other cards in, wedging it between my selected card and the rest of the deck, getting my card to the top. If you know that move, you can do the rest of this. Okay, so that is the spread call, just kind of broken down the way I think about it. Maybe you found that helpful. If you didn't find that helpful, then check out some of those YouTube videos out there. There's quite a few of them. It's a very old move. Or you can get some of those DVDs that I mentioned. So there it is, Hofstadter spread call. From there we'll look at the phases of my Common Magician, ACR for the Common Magician. So we'll take a look at that next. Okay, so phase 1 of this ambitious card routine using just a spread call is pretty simple. What we want to do is we want them to select a card. Now, for all of the phases of this, some cards are better than others. Some cards don't work as well. A few cards in particular really won't work at all for the very last phase. So very quickly, any number card is good. Okay, any number card is good except for aces, which isn't really a number card. Okay, aces are no good. You do not want to have an ace selected. So you may want to try to get a spread for them to select and touch that doesn't include any aces when you start this effect. Face cards are usable, but they increased a little bit of risk. So they could select a queen, a jack, or a king. However, for the very last phase that we're going to do, that may be a little tricky. It will depend on the success of the last phase. If they pick a face card, is going to depend on your abilities as a salesperson. Okay, so we'll get to that in a little bit. So in general, you want them to pick a number card, really any number card except for the ace. And if you can avoid face cards, you're better off. But if if they pick a face card, you probably can make it work. So here's the first part, first phase, phase 1. You want them to pick a number card, but what we're going to do is we're going to actually call an indifferent card first. So very, very early on, once I get through about 4 or 5 cards, I'm just going to call out a card. I'm going to call out that 5 of clubs and get that out. So now I have my 5 of clubs separated from the spread, and I'm spreading everything in on top of that. Also, you can use, as you go through this, you can use kind of that card in place of your fingers. You just kind of move it up and down, and you can clamp the cards that you're bringing in. So it's kind of like treating it like an oven mitt, I guess, in a way. You have the cards on top and the card on the bottom, and your fingers surrounding them, and you're just grabbing cards and clamping them in. So let me go over that again. I'm going to call an indifferent card, let's say the 9 of spades. I've called that out. And then I get to a point where they're going to select a card. So maybe somewhere around here, and I've got a lot of face cards in there, so whatever. Let's say that they pick the 9 of clubs, just to make it easy on us right now. We'll talk about face cards a little bit later on. They pick the 9 of clubs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to then insert the 9 of clubs over top of my called card. Okay, right here. So I've pushed in the card above the 9 of clubs rather, the jack of diamonds, and then the 9 of clubs is going to go over that. Now the reason why I called this indifferent card is because it's actually easier to call a second card on top of a first card. That is a very old principle that some people teach today, but it's an old known thing that calling the next card after the first one is easier. And the more cards you call, actually, the easier it is to control them. The reason is because there's less friction. When I get to my 9 of clubs, and I cull it over top of my first called card, it slides over really, really easy. So now I've got 2 cards in there. Now the only one that matters is the one that I just called out. The other one we just used to help us. Okay, you don't have to do that. If you want to, you can just call the card that they select. So let's say they selected the 3 of spades. But that does put a little bit of heat on you, and it gives a little bit of a stutter because you're pulling, you know, with less friction. So I find that it's easier to call an indifferent card first and then have them select one. So let's say they pick the 4 of diamonds right here. I'll call that on top of my indifferent card, then spread everything else out. And all the while, again, part of this is knowing the Hofstadter spread call, but the other part of it is having the ability to kind of charm your audience a little bit, have a little bit of charisma. You want to be persuasive. So I would be talking about how all the cards are different in this deck, and they've picked one unique card. They want to be thinking about that 4 in their mind. They should think about it very clearly. And that is a bit of a misdirection, that they're thinking about one thing while you're spreading the cards out. Okay. Once we've done that, you very slowly turn the deck over, and you can say, no funny moves here. I'm not doing anything strange. You're thinking of that card. We snap our fingers, and you see that that card comes to the top. That's the first phase. Okay, so you're just spread calling out the card that they selected very slowly, very freely, and then with your presentation you make it arrive back at the top. So that's phase 1. We'll take a look at the next one here in a moment. Okay, so the phase 2 of this is essentially the reverse, the other side of an ACR routine. That is to use an indifferent card, a stand-in card, as a decoy when you're inserting it into the deck. We can use the spread call to achieve that. So this is where I left off from the very first one. In which case, by the way, I actually did what I said I was doing. I did, in fact, move their card from the middle to the top. I just did it in a timing that they weren't expecting me to be doing anything. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn over their card, and I'm going to turn the deck face up, and I'm going to talk again about how there is no duplicate in here. They really did pick a unique card. And then very early on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just call any card. So I just called out the 8 of spades there, and then I'm going to continue spreading on top of that 8 of spades until I get all the way to the top, and I'm going to tell them, you can see that there's no other cards that are like the 4 of diamonds. There's only one 4 of diamonds in this deck. You actually could have them sign that card after the very first phase if you wanted to. But what I've done is I've called an indifferent card on top of it. You can't see it under the spread, but my 8 of spades is sitting right there. So when I square up at this point, I have actually put their card second from top, which is a very good place to be in an ambitious card routine. So I've done that very slowly, and then I turn the deck over very slowly. And I make a big deal about how I'm moving slowly. No funny business here. I'm not making any strange moves. I'm going to take their card, and they just saw it. They were just looking at their card, staring at them with the deck facing spread out the other way. So this is pretty convincing. I tell them I'm going to put it very fairly right into the middle of the deck, very, very slowly, just like that. No strange moves, no breaks, nothing going on in here that you should be alarmed about. We snap our fingers, and their card comes back to the top. So that is phase 2, using the same move, that Hofstadter spread call. However, this time to add an indifferent decoy card in rather than to make their card move. Let's take a look at the third part of this. So this is the third sort of phase to it, a third method, and really this is no different than the first one. It just seems different, and I'll show you how that is. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the card that is now on the top, and I tell them I'm going to be very fair. I'm going to put it into the middle so that you can see it. You can see that it's sticking out there. You can see that it really is in the middle. And then I make a deal out of the fact that the top card is, the Queen of Hearts or whatever it is. And if you look at the other side, The bottom of the deck is the 10 of spades. So again here, what I'll do is I'll cull an indifferent card. I just called out the King of Diamonds. This will make culling their card a little bit easier because the heat is on now. This isn't like the very first time where they weren't expecting something, so you really want this to be pretty smooth. And you can go slow, but you don't want to be, fidgeting with it. When you get to their card, you will turn it over. I've already got one other card called out to help myself here. When I get to their their card, the 4 of diamonds in this case, I cover it up, and it's sitting on top of my first called card, right there. And I sneak it out. I call it out. And by the way, if there's a little bit of flashing on the top, it really doesn't matter as much as you think. I'll explain why in a second here. What I do is I call it out, and then I just spread through and I say, you can see that your card really is in the middle of the deck. I've got the 10 of spades on the bottom. I've got the Queen of Hearts on the top. Now really what I've got is I've got the Queen of Hearts on the top, and then my 2 cards, their card and the indifferent card, are sitting on top of it, so such that whenever I go to close the spread, their card will then be on the top. But this is a pretty good visual. I say the bottom card is the 10 of spades, the top card is the Queen of Hearts, and your card is in the middle. It's very, very fair. In fact, I'll turn it over very slowly. No funny moves in there. We give a snap, and your card has come to the top. So the point of doing that is to kind of demonstrate that there's no shifting of the deck going on. That the bottom card is this, the top card is, whatever it was, and that's going to be the same when I turn the deck over. You can see that as I turn the deck over, that's still the case. I still have those cards in that position. The deck is not shifting. The parts of the deck are not switching places. We give it a snap, and then there's their card. Now, very quickly about flashing in a Hofstadter spread call. You would probably get called out by a magician, someone who does this. In a flashing kind of scenario there, but the reality is that it's hard for most people to really understand what kind of space you have under the deck. If I, let's say I call this out, and you can see, let me see if I can make it happen. I got to look in the camera here. If I call it out and you can see it kind of move in, see it up here, kind of flashing a little bit, and if I'm going slowly, you see it move in beyond where it should be. It's not really that big of a deal. Think about it like this. Spreading the deck is sort of like a stage illusion where you have, that border, a light color, and then a dark color, and then a light color on the edge of the table. And it's kind of masking the thickness of the table, such that it looks like a thin table, but in fact it's actually, a foot thick. And you can really put 2 people and a tiger in there, right? It's the same kind of idea. When you're looking at the deck, it's not really easy to perceive that I actually have, from the 6 of hearts over to the end, enough space to stick a whole card in there that would not be in the spread. It's not easy to perceive of that when you're looking at the faces of the cards. A person doesn't think in that way. So the fact that I might be pulling out that Jack of Hearts, and it might, flash up here a little bit as it comes out, that doesn't necessarily, tell that it's past the 6 of hearts, and I'm able to put it somewhere else. You get my meaning here. Flashing isn't really that big of a deal. I'll tell you when flashing really matters. Flashing really matters when you're moving way too fast. If you're moving along here and you rip a card out and it flashes and you're going really quick, that quick move, that quick jutting out of a card, that looks a little strange. But if you're moving really, really slowly, and something kind of sticks out in there, it isn't going to really show up. One thing that people talk about with this move is the accordion effect. It's good as you're spreading to be kind of doing this compression and spread kind of move, right? And that helps to mask a lot of the stuttering that could happen in there and some of the flashing. But really, the best thing to do is just to be moving slowly. You can see I called out that king, but because I'm moving very slowly, it really doesn't create an alarming look. And once I get it to where I need it to be, it's going to get covered up anyway. But I've called it out, and it flashed really bad. But you don't perceive that as being a problem. Okay, so don't worry about the flashing so much. What you want to worry about when culling a card is this kind of flashing, where they're actually looking out the end of the deck. They should always be looking at the faces. It might mean that you want to turn sideways so they can see the cards better. Really, the way I have this in the perspective of the camera is what you want. Okay, so anyway, just to reiterate what happened here. Third phase, their card is on top. I tell them I'm going to put it very fairly into the middle of the deck, facing the wrong way to make it very obvious. The top card is a king of clubs. In fact, you can see that the bottom card is a 10 of spades, and you see that those cards will stay in their position, that they're not going to move. The packets, the two halves of the deck, are not going to be shifting in any way. Your card is, in fact, right in the middle of the deck, and you can see that there's no duplicates in there. Again, I've got the king of clubs on the top, the 10 of spades on the bottom. Your card is in the middle. Very, very fair. No funny moves. No transpositions of the halves. And snap, and your card is back to the top again. So that would be the kind of third phase there. Still using the Hofstadter spread call, the same move that we've been focusing on. And then we'll take a look here in a second at the very last idea that I have. So this is a really old idea, and I don't really have any attribution on it. I'm not sure who to attribute this to, but you can take many of the cards in the deck, and just by showing a little part of it, you can pass off another card that's similar to it as that card. So for example, let's say we have the 4 of diamonds, and this is the one that we picked. I could pass off a couple of other cards as a 4 of diamonds, probably the 5 of diamonds or 6 of diamonds. Once I get past the 6, it probably would be more difficult. But so anything that has, a couple of diamonds on either end of the card would work for this. So what I'm going to do is in this last phase, which is probably the most alarming one because everything looks genuine and it happens in their hand if you want it to. They can actually have it occur right inside of their hands. What you do is you're going to take their card and turn it over and say your card is on the top, and really there are no other duplicates. I know that might be hard to believe, but your card is the only one that's of its kind in here. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for a 5 of diamonds or a 6 of diamonds that I can substitute in. Now I get to the 6 first, so I'm probably just going to grab that one. Now, you cannot call an indifferent card first on this one. You need to call it straight up because you can't have a second indifferent card between that card and the one that's on top. We're going to be using this one as the decoy, but it's going to be a decoy that we can look at. Okay, so again, I'm showing them. You may not believe it, but there really is only one 4 of diamonds in here. You can stare at every single card in this deck, and you'll notice that there's only one. Now, very slowly, I just called out that 6. There went the 5 too. I could have used that one. Now, when I get to the top, I say there is only one 4 of diamonds, and that's the one that you selected. Now, what I have in my situation here is I have my called card, my 6 of diamonds, sitting on top of the 4, and then I close up the spread again and I turn it over and I say, look, one last time, very, very fairly, I'm going to take your card, I'm going to place it into the deck, and you can see it right up to the last second going into the deck. Now what I've done is I turn it over just with that margin showing on the top, and it looks like it's a 4 of diamonds, and I'm covering up the number. Okay, you don't want them to stare at this for any great length of time, but just a quick glance like this, turn it over smoothly and turn it right back, and then push it in very slowly. They just looked at it. They swear that they just looked at the 4 of diamonds, and set it in their hand as you do that, as you push it in. And then you say, look, I can't do anything with the deck. You saw it go into the middle, but I'm going to snap, go ahead and turn over the top card. And when they do that, they'll be blown away because they just saw you put their card into the middle of the deck. So again, just using a Hofstadter spread call to pull this off. No double lift, no complicated controls, no shifts in there. So anyway, that's a very basic 4-part ambitious card routine using only one move that probably would be very, very successful for most people, maybe even most magicians, because magicians are thinking a little bit differently about this routine than what I just did there. So a couple other things about that last phase. Some cards don't work. So you can't really do that last thing with an ace. You might be able to do it. Let's say I have the ace of clubs up there. So let's say I call out, this is probably really just a waste of time to even be doing this, but let's say I call out the 2 of clubs once I get to it. So I find my 2, I call it out, and I show that they picked the ace. It's just there's only 1 in there, and I turned it over. I could probably very awkwardly set it in there, something like that, and turn it over so they just, see, I don't think you can really do it. I'm trying to think of a way that you could hold it. Maybe like this, right, and turn it over. No, that doesn't really. Yeah, aces are junk. You don't want to do it with aces. Aces don't work for that. Now, face cards, very quickly. Let's say that the card you've been dealing with the whole time is king. Okay, so king of clubs. I start with my king of clubs on the top, and I say that there's only one card like it. What I'm looking for is the jack of clubs, and I'm going to call the jack out. Now, it doesn't really look a lot like the king, but it is a man, and it is a club, so this might work. I show the king of clubs. I probably don't want to dwell on this image too much. I don't want them to look right at it. Probably better if when I last show it to them, they're looking only at the index over there. I close it up. I have the jack on top. I'm going to take the jack and put it in, and I'm going to get most of it covered up pretty good, and I'm going to turn it over, and all they see is a man's face, very briefly, like that, and I close it up, and then snap, and then there's their card. So that might work. They may not notice that he didn't have a mustache a minute ago, but now he does. It may pass if you kind of just give a quick little glance at it. So you can do face cards. You can do jacks for kings. You can do kings for jacks. Now, if they have a queen, let's say they have the queen of hearts is their card. So I show, here's your queen of hearts, and you can look inside the deck that there's only one queen of hearts in there. There are no other cards that are like that. What I'm looking for is probably going to be the jack of hearts. So once I see the jack of hearts, I'm going to call it out. Okay, and I show here again that their card is on top, the queen of hearts, and then I put it on. Probably okay if you get it really close to the end of the margin and show it pretty quickly, but you'll see that there's a mustache on that guy. If I can get this right down to the edge, probably if I was doing this, I would hold my finger over the index and push it right until my fingers are touching the deck. Turn it over and say, you can see right to the last minute, there it is, there it's going in. So in general, you want to avoid face cards for this, but you could do it. So jacks for kings, kings for jacks, probably jacks for queens. You probably wouldn't get away with a king for a queen. There's too much difference in the way that they look. The mustache is much bigger on the king than it is on the jacks that have one. So anyway, yeah, that's my idea, to use a Hofstadter spread call as the only move in an ambitious card routine. So one move, be charming, have a bit of charisma, and be slow about it. Be slow and deliberate, and you can do a good ambitious card routine with a pretty simple move that doesn't take a great deal of time to master. Again, practice that Hofstadter spread call just with a couple of cards, just practicing the general feeling of pushing one card over another and then pulling it out underneath. Okay, and once you've done that, add another card to it. So you're culling out like this, using a card on top of it. So I'm calling the queen, I push the king over top, I switch it off, I pull underneath that 4, and underneath my king I pull out my queen, and I pull it out to the left until it snaps. Should snap right off the end of that. You'll feel it more than you would hear it, but at that point I know I've got it free. Okay, then add more cards to it. I'm going to call out the king underneath the 4. So I push the 4 in. Once the 4 gets past it, I pull out and I get it past. And you feel it snap. Then I can push everything in over top of it. Add, a couple more cards on either side of this. Let's say I'm going to call out the Queen of Hearts. So I spread like this, and then I push forward on my 4 of spades, cover up the queen, pull it out until I kind of feel that click, that pop, and then I push everything on top of it, and I've called it out. Then add a few more cards, and so on. So this is probably the easiest way to get to a point where you're calling cards pretty smoothly and go very, very slow. I can't say that enough. Anyway, there it is. Ambitious card routine for the common magician using just a Hofzinser spread call and a little bit of good patter. So good luck with this, and I wish all of you happy magicking.